In 1815, on the day of the Battle of Waterloo, one family learned the outcome of the battle before any government in Europe, and while soldiers were dying on the fields of Belgium, a banker in London placed a bet that would turn his family into a financial empire for the next 200 years. This is not conspiracy. This is the documented history of the Rothschild family. And if you think wealth is always built through honest work, this story will prove you wrong. War is not just blood and ideology. It is the most profitable business in human history, and no one understood this truth better than the Rothschilds. But let's start from the beginning. In the second half of the 18th century, in the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, there lived a coin dealer named Mayer Amschel Rothschild. The ghetto was a place of poverty, restrictions, and humiliation. Jews were forbidden to own land, engage in most professions, or even move freely around the city. But these restrictions had one unexpected loophole. They were allowed to engage in money lending, a profession the Christian church considered a sin. Mayer was smart. He traded rare coins and antique metals, and quickly understood the main rule of money. Money is not a thing. It is relationships. And the best relationships are with those who control armies and kingdoms. He began serving aristocrats, selling them coins, giving them loans, and soon attracted the attention of Prince William of Hesse, one of the wealthiest men in Europe. The prince made a fortune renting out soldiers to other countries. Yes, you heard that right. He literally sold his own people for war. Britain was fighting American colonies. The prince sent mercenaries there for gold. Mayer became his financial agent, managed his money, invested it, collected interest. This was the beginning, but Mayer's real genius was not in trading coins. It was in what he did next. He had 5 sons. And he sent each of them to different financial capitals of Europe. Amschel stayed in Frankfurt. Salomon went to Vienna, Nathan to London, Karl to Naples, James to Paris. 5 brothers, 5 cities, 1 family. And this was a brilliant decision, because in the early 19th century, Europe was divided by wars. Napoleon was conquering the continent. Borders were changing every year. Communications were slow. Information was gold. And the Rothschilds had a network, private, fast, family-run. They could send messages between capitals faster than any government, couriers, pigeons, encrypted letters. While kings were guessing what was happening on the other side of the continent, the Rothschilds already knew, and they used this information not to stop wars, but to profit from them. Let's talk about how war enriches bankers. When a country goes to war, it needs money, lots of money. Soldiers need to be paid, weapons need to be bought, horses, supplies, ships. It all costs a fortune. But governments don't have that kind of money in advance. So they take loans, they issue bonds, promises to pay in the future with interest. And this is where bankers come in. The Rothschilds gave loans to everyone: Britain, Austria, Prussia. Sometimes even to warring sides simultaneously. It doesn't matter who wins. What matters is that everyone owes. This was a win-win business. War generates debt. Debt generates interest. Interest generates power. And the most cynical thing about this scheme is this. Bankers didn't just finance wars. They influenced their outcome. Because whoever gives money decides how long an army can hold out. Without credit, there is no war. The Rothschilds did not command soldiers, but they controlled what soldiers could not fight without. Now, for the main moment, the Battle of Waterloo. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte met the Allied forces in Belgium. This was the decisive battle. If Napoleon won, he would restore his empire and continue wars across Europe. If he lost, France would fall and the continent would get peace. For the markets, this was a matter of life and death. British bonds, company shares, currency, everything depended on the outcome of one battle. And while Europe held its breath, Nathan Rothschild sat in London. He had an agent on the battlefield, a man who watched the battle in real time. As soon as Napoleon was defeated, the agent rushed to the coast, crossed the English Channel, and delivered the news to Nathan. This happened several hours before the official courier arrived at the British government. Think about it. A private banker knew the outcome of the century's most important battle before his own government. And what did he do? Here's where history becomes legend. There is a famous myth. Allegedly, Nathan went to the London Stock Exchange and began selling British bonds. Traders panicked. If Rothschild is selling, Britain must have lost. Prices collapsed. Everyone was selling in panic. And then, when the price hit rock bottom, Nathan bought everything back on the cheap. When the news of victory reached London, bonds skyrocketed, and Rothschild made a fortune in one day. Is this myth or truth? Historians still debate. Some say this story is exaggerated. Others claim it is absolutely real. But here's what we know for sure. After Waterloo, the Rothschilds became the wealthiest family in Europe. Their fortune grew many times over, and they financed almost all major governments on the continent. The London Stock Exchange called Nathan the most influential man in the financial world. What matters is not so much the legend as the reality. They truly possessed information. They truly had access to bonds and markets. And they truly used wars as a source of income. The myth exists because it reflects the truth about how power works. Money is not made in production. Money is made on information, access, and manipulation. After Waterloo, the family became something more than bankers. They became creditors to empires. Britain owed the Rothschilds. Austria owed. Prussia owed. Even the Pope owed. In 1820, the Rothschilds saved the Bank of England from collapse. In 1830, they financed Belgium after its independence. In 1834, they gave Spain a loan for war. They financed the construction of the Suez Canal, bought gold mines, invested in railroads around the world. Every war, every crisis, the Rothschilds were there. They didn't just give loans, they controlled the terms. If a country couldn't pay, the Rothschilds took assets. Debt turned into property. Sovereignty turned into dependency. In 1875, when Egypt was on the verge of bankruptcy, Lionel Rothschild gave Britain £4 million overnight to purchase control of the Suez Canal. A private family had more liquidity than entire states. You think borders are drawn by kings and generals? No. They're drawn by those who pay for the cannons. The Morgans in America, the Warburgs in Germany, the Baruchs, Kuhns, Loebs, all the major financial houses did the same. War has always been a profitable business, but the Rothschilds were the first to turn it into a global system. They created a transnational financial empire in an era when nation-states still thought within borders. That's why they were hated, not for religion, for power, for being uncontrollable. Kings could declare wars, but without Rothschild money, those wars quickly ended. This spawned rumors, conspiracy theories, anti-Semitic myths. Many of these myths were absurd, but the fear that spawned them was real, because people felt that real power was not in parliaments, but in private offices where credit decisions were made, and they were right. By the end of the 19th century, the Rothschilds were so powerful that European newspapers openly called them kings without crowns. One French pamphlet wrote, "Europe is ruled by three powers: Russia in the east, Britain on the seas, and the Rothschilds in the banks." This was not a metaphor. It was a statement of fact. But what happened next? Why don't we hear about the Rothschilds as often today as we do about the Morgans or Rockefellers? Because in the 20th century, the world changed. World War I destroyed the old order. Empires fell. Central banks emerged that took on the role of government creditors. The Federal Reserve in America, the Bank of England, was nationalized. Financial power began to shift from private bankers to state institutions, or at least that's how it looked on paper. In reality, private bankers simply changed strategy. Instead of openly lending to governments, they became shareholders in central banks, members of their boards, advisors to finance ministers. Power didn't disappear, it became less visible. Today the Rothschilds still exist. Their bank operates in London, Paris, Zurich. They manage billions. But they are no longer the richest or most visible, because the system they helped create has grown larger than them. A system where war generates debt, debt generates interest, and interest creates dependency. This system is now global. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the central banks of all major economies, they all operate on the model the Rothschilds applied back in the 19th century. Lend to countries during crises, demand reforms in exchange for money, take control of resources if they can't pay back. Names have changed. Institutions have grown larger. But the logic remains the same. The Rothschild story is not the story of one family. It's the story of how the financial system turned war into a product, how information became more valuable than gold, how private interests learned to use national tragedies for personal gain. During World War I, American banks financed the Allies. During World War II, they financed Europe's reconstruction. In 2008, governments bailed out banks with trillions. Every crisis is an opportunity for those who control credit. The main lesson of the Rothschild family. Information is power, speed is advantage, and whoever controls access to credit controls the future. Today we live in a world where central banks print trillions, where debt grows faster than the economy, and if you ask who they owe it to, the answer is the same as it was 200 years ago. The system, the institutions, those on the other side of the balance sheet. And while we view wars as tragedies, someone views them as investments. History doesn't repeat itself, but if you ignore it, it will crush you. The Rothschilds made billions not because they were villains, but because they understood the rules of the game before others, and played it without sentiment. If this video gave you a new perspective, subscribe to the channel. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.